What's it like to run and scale $100 million business or a $500 million business? Well, today's special guest, Bill Gallagher, has done exactly that. For the last 30 years, Bill is a leading expert in scaling businesses from startups through to $500 million and multi-million dollar exits, $100 million plus. So today we're going to learn off Bill some insides to what's it like. What sort of different thinking do you need to run if you are wanting to scale to that size? And I know for a lot of our listeners, maybe you're not thinking going quite that big, but wait till you hear what Bill has to share with us today, particularly on exits. Bill is also going to share with us a personal experience of his multi-million-dollar exit mistake. So sorry, Bill, to put you on a spot with that one, and that there is some really cool lessons behind there, isn't there? So, Bill, did I get you the intro right? You're the man that takes these companies through to 100 million plus exits. So you've done that as a CEO, but these days you do it as a coach as well.
Yeah. Well, at the age of 61, you have lots of good stories,
Yep.
both good and bad.
And that's why I wanted you on here, Bill, when you and I, so listeners, I was on Bill's awesome podcast. We had so much fun and we got talking about exits, and Bill shared with me one of his big mistakes. But also what fascinated me was, Bill, your actual experience now. Can you share with us, to put it in context, what sort
Well,
of
so
companies are you coaching now,
so
and
I
why?
w I was a CEO for years before, entrepreneur and CEO. I started and ran some businesses for other people that other people owned,
Mhm.
um, including one public company. I started a new part of a public company, and then in a range of size, like startup through over 500 million, and some in between, and some of those were successful and some were not. And then uh, how many years ago? About 13 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah.
12 years ago, I went coaching full time, and I started coaching others, and I started working with CEOs and then with the whole C-suite. And I have since coached three companies to past a billion in value. Yeah. And then I have, and at least two of those sold. Um, and two sold, and one is still owned by the same people. And I have one more that within like 2 years is going to hit a billion. And then I just took on a new company with some backing that I think has a good shot at getting a billion value pretty soon. So I do, like, after you start to do a couple and get known for it, like, you attract more. I've now had about 11 or 12 companies sell for something north of 100 million.
Wow.
So on average, I have like one sell every year, sometimes none, sometimes two, like that kind of thing. So hundred or hundreds of millions of dollars on the regular. It's really cool. And I
Yeah.
think I wish more would think about selling. So whether you're going to sell for 7 million, 25 million, 100, like whatever the thing is, it'd be much better to sell because, companies go through arcs and they go through
Yep.
many challenges along the way. And um, if you think about, like, well, I just want to grow this business for now, and I don't know, I started it for whatever reason and I want to grow it, but I don't think about that today. What you've done is essentially put off the decision, like, someday I'll think about that.
Yep.
So what brings out someday? Someday comes then from one of two reasons. Well, three. One of them is somebody approaches you and says, "Hey, I want to buy you. I want to buy your business." And that's one of the nicest, luckiest things. It also has a lot of potential danger because there's a lot of tricks people can use when you have a single buyer trying to go after a business to devalue the business and to get the
Yeah.
business from you at a super, super discount. So a single buyer approaches you. The other one is you get too tired, right? You're like, "I'm
Yep.
old now, and I gotta sell this business," and you're ready to check out, and you want to do that. Unfortunately, if you haven't done it before then, your business probably isn't set up well. Like, your management team, the succession isn't managed. You haven't designed things well if you wait until you're tired. And there's one other one that's very related to being too tired, and that is that the business has a problem now that's so big that you can't
Yeah.
or just don't have the emotional or financial resources to deal with the challenge. And then boom, you're like, wow, this business that I thought was tracking to hundreds of millions, now I can't sell it.
That's an interesting one too, isn't it? A lot of people don't think alike that because at the start, like you said, they're all excited. They're building to so
Yeah,
Bill, as you know, a lot of our members they want to do the 7 or 8 figure exit. Typically,
yeah,
seven figures is reasonably easily achievable. But here today,
hard.
listeners, we're talking
Yep.
to Bill, who takes people into 9 figures. So,
Yeah.
Bill, you would have seen people like our clients at the startup phase too go to that 7 figure level. Are there some key differences thinking, kinds of different thinking from someone that's going, if someone's listening to this and they've kind of got this plan, I'll hit 7 figures, so in the millions, then I want to go to tens of millions, then I want to go to the hundreds of millions. What's in that? Is there massive different thinking levels
Well,
that you
here's
need to
here's a
go?
question I have. Why do you not want to go to whatever you've decided, right? So, why is that? I think
Mm,
there's some common reasons. And the
yep.
basic one is it'll be too hard and my life will suck.
Yep. Yep.
I think that's the most one. Like
Uh,
or I'll be out of my depth and I'll lose control or whatever. But I think it'll be too hard. I'll be out of my depth, like that kind of thing. And the truth is, after a couple of people, then it's just changes in style and approach. I woke up quite hungover at a beach hotel in Mexico one morning,
yep. Best
and
stories always start this way, don't they?
in my 20s, right?
Yeah.
And I was now running a piece of another business that was over 500 million.
How old were you?
And I was, I don't know, 27. Um
Man.
so like, right, and I was like, oh, you could picture like the nausea and the searing pain and the aversion to bright light and like and I am thinking I have to deal with something today. I don't want to deal with something today. And then I thought I'm responsible for 1.6 million or whatever it is today, right?
Yeah.
And tomorrow and the next day. No matter how much I've drunk, I'm responsible for that.
Yeah.
That's on me. I'm a responsible person. That's why I have this job, but I have to pull my shit together now and deal with this. And I
Yeah.
I don't remember even what it was anymore, but I do remember having that realization on the beach that no matter how I felt or what state I was in, at any given moment, I was accountable for that.
Yep.
And that both was something to be proud of, like, oh, I'm proud of myself for that, but also a sobering thought. Like, so I pulled it together and I did what I had, and then I went back to the rest of a glorious vacation.
All right.
Um, and I think that the balance of the two is not hard. Like, it's possible. Lots of people do that, and whether it's a few million or a few billion, people do that on the regular, and they
Okay.
and they do it in all sorts of ways because collectively the team is pulling for this thing to turn out. Like, nobody wants you to fail and that kind of thing, and just waiting for you to screw up. Like, I mean, maybe one or two people are because they want your job or something like that, but and for the most part, like, getting past a couple million, you're going to need a team. You
Okay.
can get a one person business with maybe some contractors, that kind of thing, but you're not going to have a really big business
Mhm.
without learning to engage lots of people. And for sure, with technology today and e-commerce and things like that, you can have a bigger business with virtual teams and partners and things like that. I watched my son's last business get to hundreds of millions of dollars and have only, I don't know, when he left there, I think there were 50 people and a million users,
Wow.
right? So over a million users in their on their system, and only 50 employees, and now a company that's worth a lot of money. And I watched I featured this guy on my podcast some years ago, who got his business over 200 million with 4 employees. And so it's possible today using contractors and things like that and novel business approaches to get, but setting the exceptions aside, you're not going to get a really massive business or anything like that without dealing with people. So You can go really big, and you can do it and have a great life. You just have to learn to deal with people. Now, learning to deal with people is for sure the hardest part of business, right? A strategy, a system, some software, all that's easier than human beings.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, definitely. So what you've seen then for listeners, no matter, I would actually say, Bill, no matter what level you're at, you need to learn to outsource and build team. If you're really serious about going to the eight figures into tens of millions, to
Teams,
100 millions,
partners,
teams and
real teams,
partners.
virtual teams, etc. Yes.
Okay. And that's what, so when you're coaching someone, so you say you're working with teams and individuals, but you're with the leadership team, are you? And
I
you're telling
with a
them what
leadership team, and I have not started, well, aside from like talking to friends or whatever, but I haven't done any solopreneur companies.
so you work with, and with these, is that a key focus area, or you're like that you're helping these companies implement to go to that next level? And are you also talking about exit strategy as well at the same time?
Yeah, so not everybody who approaches me is thinking actively about an exit. They all should be. I think everybody should be thinking about let's get it growing and then let's
Yes.
sell out before we've reached before you've reached your vision, sell on the way. You
Right.
definitely don't want to like get your vision and then try to sell because people want to buy the future. And if you don't have a future vision, it's up to them to make it and that's not their job, right? So their job is to think about to buy into your vision and
Yep.
then want to do an even better job of it. To think that, well, that's what he thought up and I could make that a little, but you have to give them something, a future, not already, oh, we hit now 200 million and I want to sell. You want to be like, we're going for 200 million and now we've sold at, I mean, you could sell a company at 10 million that's going for 200. If your vision for 200 is pretty clear and credible, and you're starting to show evidence, even at a small number, you could interest an investor.
So this is perfect, and that's really good advice, Bill. I think for anyone at any level, like we always say, like the famous book, or everyone says in our game, be thinking of the exit from day one. But I like what you've just said, practical experience too. If you have a vision, sell well before you hit that vision. And so these companies that you're doing, like you said, one a
Or if
year.
you have a need or a drive, like I want, like emotionally, ego, whatever, you want to sell at something.
Yep.
Like let's say you want to sell for 100 million.
Yep.
That's what your soul needs, right? That's debatable, but let's say that's the case. Then go create a $250 million vision, right?
Perfect.
And then sell as you hit your 100. To be honest, I think that what makes a business saleable, right, is a business that looks like it could get bigger than it already is and some upward trend. That's a story and people buy stories.
Yeah.
So
Very much so.
what makes it not saleable is I don't see the future for this business. And the numbers are bad right now and there's no leadership team, right? So having leaders who can run it without you is the other thing that lets you exit it.
Okay. Yeah. So that is so important, I think, Bill, for even for small businesses through to medium size to large size, is what you
Mhm,
just said, is having a bright future, good
mhm,
numbers, but listeners, a team
mhm,
behind there. The more automated a business is, or the more that the business doesn't rely on you, the easier the sale
mhm.
is and the higher the multiple. Generally, well, I know in my experience, that's always been the case. By the way, that's why
Yeah.
online businesses rock too, because you can automate them. um, but so with coming to your personal experience here, Bill, I know it's painful to bring it up, but let's talk about it. It is a really cool story when you mentioned that to me. It's a big number that you felt you missed out on. What
Yeah.
was the mistake? Because I think there's some really good lessons for any business owner to learn from this. It's very powerful, and people don't get to see it. So you think about it. You and I take this for granted. Anyone in M&A knows all this sort of stuff. But for your average person that's running a business, they got no idea of this stuff. What was the mistake that you made there? Because you were building a very successful business at the time. Do you want to take us back to that
Well,
point?
I've made many many different mistakes at different
Okay,
points
yeah.
in my life.
Yeah, we all
And
have, don't worry.
I've made a number of multi-million dollar mistakes, and this is one of them. This mistake cost me about 2 million out of pocket,
Yeah.
and the opportunity to sell a business approaching $250 million in sales. Right. So, yeah, really painful. So, and the principle, we'll come to that. But here's what happened: is I coming out of a recession, we figured something out. Not I, but our team figured a strategy out, a winning product formula, a pivot, a micro pivot within the current business that started to be winning. We started growing really rapidly. We greatly expanded things, and we made a number of mistakes in that rapid growth, as one does. Like things start growing rapidly, things also start breaking.
Yep.
So one of the things that we did is I bought software for a 20x future, right? I didn't buy software for a little bit, but way into the future. And that software was expensive and complex, and it slowed us down in many ways. And one of the things that I did is that my salespeople entered a variety of orders and left them in the incorrect status. They created draft orders, multiple for the same thing actually, and then forgot about what they were doing and left it in a draft status, and then did it again, like because they lost their place, because they got kicked out, because they went to lunch, any number of, whatever. There was a bunch of double entered orders in the same condition. And I had new management in purchasing and production. And that new management heard, oh, we have winning items and we have breakthrough sales, which was all true. And then they saw these orders in there, and they didn't have a lot of experience yet. And they're working also with some new factories. And they're in this new system, and they see this stuff and they're like, man, I better get on it. I better order this stuff. And they ordered raw materials and production that we did not need and would not need for like 10 years.
Okay.
So that tied up cash. And then the accounting team is like, sees all this stuff, and they start figuring out, you have to do, when you've got big purchasing and production, you have to do things like letters of credit or advanced deposits and things like that. So that starts tying up my cash.
Yeah.
And people start getting to work on things that I don't actually need. And so a couple things happen. One, it's too many things changing at once.
Okay.
Too many things are changing at once. And I have really good practices at that time around metrics, around dashboards, around planning, around rallying the team. Everybody's super motivated. They're super motivated, and they make mistakes, and they're all jazzed and pulling together, and they're in action and acting with velocity without hesitation. And there go millions of dollars. So, what happened is that we didn't ask what's most likely to go wrong. What are we not paying attention to? And so that's one of there's many lessons here, right? One of them is too many things changing, people, systems, growth, customers, like everything's growing all at once. Things are going to get out of whack. The second one is that like compounded is that we weren't thinking about what's most likely to break now. And that's a really useful thing to both think about and to choose. So you're creating a plan, and you're an upbeat, positive person like me, you don't ask necessarily, how is this likely to fail? And when people ask that, you get upset. You're like, you're trying to shoot my plan apart. No, they're trying to make it better. They're not trying to destroy it. They're trying to find the holes in it. So it's not necessarily my nature to do that, except for myself. But as a coach, I do that pretty well for people. I'm like, yeah, really? Will that happen? I don't know. Like, maybe we should think about some contingencies. So we had tracking on items, orders, like sales orders, winning items, things like that, and shipping and cash and all that. What I didn't balance and took for granted was purchasing and production. It just always had been an easy, safe, stable part of the business. And I didn't I didn't measure with the same focus what's on purchase and production relative to the orders and the sales plan. Because if I'd seen it like jump way up, if that had been visible to me in a standard way, the way that winning items were, I would have seen, wait a minute, timeout. I know she's winning over there in sales, but we didn't do 10 times. Like we did double, like whatever. So we ordered way more, and if I'd been tracking all of the right things, I would have caught it. So anytime you put a focus on, like, let's say you focus on the gross profit for your business, the gross margin for your product. So you're going to get your product or service, and you're going to find ways to chip away at the cost at it, right? You might also work on your pricing, but for gross margin, we're often thinking about the cost of goods or cost of services. So if I start to do that, what's likely to go wrong? What's the most likely thing?
Mm. Well, all sorts, like exactly what just
Product quality. Product quality, defects, that's,
over-ordering.
complaints, errors, right? If I put my focus on the cost of goods to get my margin up,
Yep.
I'm likely to have some problems. I'll source differently, I'll cut, like whatever, there'll be problems. If I put all my attention on employee productivity, what's likely to go wrong?
All sorts. Oh, that's a minefield, isn't it?
Morale. Morale will go bad first,
Okay,
and
that's
then people
interesting.
will quit. And then morale will get worse and more people will quit.
Yep.
So if you drive your people super hard and you
Yep.
don't put attention on
Interesting.
employee satisfaction, you're likely to drive them too hard as you push on your goal of more efficient labor cost, more productive labor cost. And people are going to, so always there's a question to ask, what's the most likely one or two things to break here?
That's cool.
Anytime you push on something, something's likely to break. So the question is not everything that could break, but the most likely things.
So for fast growth companies, like anyone
Yeah.
listening, you're really pushing on and you're starting to build bigger teams and things, and you're getting into, some serious sales and stuff.
Yes.
These are the sorts of questions you need. I'm just thinking of some friends of mine that own some
Yeah.
very high growth, fast companies, and you're right.
Yeah.
That's what they're seeing right now. It comes through exactly
Something.
those two problems and morale and things like that. So that's an interesting one,
Yeah.
keeping everyone excited about the dream and the vision. So that's where you help companies like implement that. And with exit mistakes, what have you seen made there too? Because no matter who it is, whether or not we have a fast growth company, as you know, and you're the same, be thinking about the exit from day one. Have you seen any big exit mistakes? Like I love your idea too, is have a
Well, the
big
first one
beautiful.
is I don't plan for the exit. I let it happen to me, right?
Okay.
So if you're intentional about it, if you envision it, if you declare it, if you go to work on it years in advance, right, it goes much better. The next exit mistake happens when we only have one buyer. So a buyer starts you thinking about selling your company, and then they lock it up, and then they throw a number out to you, and then they start to beat you down on price and find things in their due diligence process, and then they string out the close, and you can get so defeated on your emotional side and so worn down that you end up taking like a super deep discount on what you wanted to sell the company at because now you have to get out. Like you
And
just are done.
well, one of my personal mentors, Bill, here, I don't know if it's an American term, but he used it here. And he'd sold out several companies. And he said,
Yeah.
Matt, he described that was his biggest mistake. And he described it as EBIT grind, the publicly.
Big grind.
Yeah, EBIT grind. He said he sold out to publicly listed companies and they
Yeah.
one of them was American, funnily enough.
Yeah.
And he's in
Yeah.
the mining industry here in Australia. And they
Yeah.
came in and he made exactly that mistake. Only one buyer. It sounded awesome. And he goes, Matt, they were experts at buying. They knew they had me locked up and they just ground down my EBIT during
Yep.
due
Yep. Yep.
diligence.
That's
And they did
part of the
everything.
process. So they
Yeah.
find things, but they also push it down. You delay
Yeah.
investments. You do.
Yeah.
It's a classic
That's what
story.
happened to him, and he said, just be really, really careful of that. Exactly what Bill just said. It does happen, particularly when you're at into the eight, and well, he was in eight figures on that one. And then what about, you mentioned to me, you and I were talking about not accept as a seller, potential seller, not accepting a really good offer, or what have you seen around that? So the time comes, you've obviously got a really good business, and there is a buyer there with an offer. Do you take the money, or
Well, look, if you like it, look, I had a guy who I thought we could get $250 million for his business, but it was going to take another year or two of growth. And it was going to take some uncomfortable things for him to do. And he got, I don't know, 15 million or something like that US for his business, and he was really happy. And now I'm like, and I like to say he got happy with a jet when he could have had a Jaguar. I mean, a Jaguar when he could have had a jet.
Okay.
But look, not everybody needs a jet. Like, it's fine. Like, he was happy. He got a bigger house. He put some money in the bank. He got a cool car. And in his world, he was well ahead of what his dad had accomplished, So good for him.
Yeah.
And now somebody else can look at that business and go, hey, we could take this thing nationwide. This could be a big deal, right? And so they'll take it to 250,
And is that who you've normally seen to be the best buyers at this level, say 100 mil plus? Is it industry? How you're saying don't just have one buyer, but
Well,
when you think back what you've seen, okay, multiple buyers are always a go, but what sort of buyers are they at that
here's the
level?
deal. The most common buyers doing the most deals are private equity companies, right?
Yes.
And private equity companies very often have family office money, and then they use a little bit of cash and a little bit of debt, and they pile on the debt to you, and they take out money, and they let your company, and you sit with it and sweat it, and they push you really hard to grow that business for a few years, and then they sell you to a strategic buyer.
Yep.
And that's maybe the most common thing. I'd say, why don't we get clever about growing your business for a couple of years, and then you sell to a strategic buyer?
Perfect. Yeah.
So mining, interesting. If I'm in the mining equipment business, if I'm in other kind of, aside from an actual mine, right? So an actual mine, you're going to want to sell, what it's actually producing plus what it's expected to produce. So if it's not got a lot of believed future value, right? If there's not more down there underground to get out, right? Then your value is going to be pretty limited, right? It's going to be valued based on how much they think is still there to extract, and then the cost to extract of whatever it is. So that's a lot harder for strategic, unless it's like, well, we want that particular resource to be available in this region or country. Like, we're looking for a local thing for that.
Yeah.
And that's a lot less critical in mining, because mining stuff gets pulled and shipped all over the world all the time. But strategically, like, you could sell mining equipment, mining services, things like that much more locally. And then you might be really interested. You might have somebody, a mining operator from Canada, who now wants to get big in Australia and who wants to buy your little company because they are missing this piece that can. I met some guys recently, and they make parts for drills,
Yep.
like a specific component that goes in drilling. I don't know crap about this industry really, but they make a very specific piece that goes in the big digging drill bits, right? And I'm like, oh, that's fascinating. Like, you make that, and that's required to be that way. And balls, I want to say it was.
Yeah.
And it's like critical that it be sort of in this region, right? That they don't have to ship it all over the world. That's more valuable. So you start to think about that. Well, then if I find a couple buyers who really want to do that because something's opening up somewhere, that's hot, right? We can get something. So if we could figure out that you solve a problem for another company. I talked to a really tiny company that was owned by a friend of mine a few years ago, and there was a public company that he solved a key strategic problem that jeopardized their whole like market value. But he could change the whole picture for them in this key business problem they had with what he'd figured out. He was one of their customers. And that had him get not a multiple EBITDA, but essentially the value of how he could solve the problem. So the problem he solved was now the new value. So instead of being worth $1 million or $2 million, he was worth 20 to 40 million.
Nice one. Okay.
And we got him a $21 million offer.
All right. That is so cool. So
on a company with $1 million in profit.
Far out. Okay. So there is, and that's the value of strategic. Well, also if you listen to this, it's the value of talking to the right advisor, someone like Bill, or thinking about the strategic buyer. Don't just go with the standard buyers. Who else can, the strategic buyer is always, and multiple strategic buyers for different reasons even. Yes. We want to get multiple people bidding on the company. Yep. For these nebulous, potentially nebulous, but very real to them business needs. They have business problems they want to solve with whatever your company knows how to do. Yep. And
that's worth.
And also, Bill will layer in, because to finish this is we'll recap that. I love what Bill said earlier, guys, is have a vision and always be selling on the up, not where, if your figures suddenly go bad or whatever, you don't want that to be the reason why you're selling. So if you're strategic,
that's going to be at a super discount, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I think in summary, Bill, like when it comes to exits, big or small, just thinking what I've got now, this interview with you, is just be thinking strategically about an exit and look at your vision for the company, and then maybe double it. If you've won a certain number, maybe think about doubling it and sell it on the way up. That is such cool advice. Hey, Bill, so how can people get hold of you if there's someone listening to this who is on, growing an 8 or 9 figure business? We have clients all over the world listening to our podcast.
Look, I start all the time. So I have different coaching levels. We have a big program we do with a partnership to get people to their first million. We call that program Accelerator. It runs through the EO organization, the Entrepreneurs Organization. They have chapter right where you are, and all over the world we have those programs. So that's one of the programs that I work very closely with, and I develop the curriculum for them. And then I have a program for companies between 1 and 20 million. And so you're between 1 and 20 million US in sales, but you have a vision for growth or a hunger or some ambition. I have a special coaching program for that. And then I have all my private coaching clients, and there's only 10, 12 of those at a time. And those are the ones that are bigger and going faster. Or maybe they're not that big, but they have, I have one right now that's smaller, but they have a lot of funding. And so they have a mandate to grow really fast.
All right.
So funding can change that. And so anyway, I have all these different programs. I do a weekly podcast, but they can go find everything about me at scalingcoach.com.
Awesome. I'll put the links in the show notes there. And Bill, just want to say a big thank you for coming along today to share your awesome experience.
Thank you for having me on and talking with your people. We just met, and I'm so delighted to come and chat with you, and you're easy to talk to.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your insights into a fascinating part of I think you'll agree, listeners, fascinating part of the world, which is doing these $100 million, scaling companies to $100 million plus, and the exits around those. Thank you, Bill, for coming along today.